So this is reporting on a new Lancet paper. It's a brief letter published by the Lancet. Unfathomable Lancet study estimates Gaza death toll may exceed 186,000. In a letter published in the medical journal The Lancet on July 5th, 3 public health experts cited a previous official death toll of 37,396, but pointed out that armed conflicts have indirect health implications beyond the direct harm from violence, making it likely that the total number of deaths of Palestinians so far is much higher and could ultimately reach close to 200,000, if not more. Even if the conflict ends immediately, there will continue to be many indirect deaths in the coming months and years from causes such as reproductive, communicable, and non-communicable disease, wrote the authors. The total death toll is expected to be large given the intensity of this conflict. Since the authors researched the analysis, the death toll has grown to 38,193, according to Gaza health officials. The authors wrote that an untold number of Palestinians in Gaza have died as a result of destroyed healthcare infrastructure and an inability to get medical care, starvation amid Israel's near-total blockade on humanitarian aid, and the loss of funding to UNRWA, one of the very few humanitarian organizations still working in Gaza. Rasha Khatib of the Advocate Aurora Research Institute, Martin McKee of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and Salim Youssef of McMaster University and Hamilton Health Sciences noted that in recent conflicts, such indirect deaths range from 3 to 15 times the number of direct deaths. Applying a conservative estimate of 4 indirect deaths per 1 direct death to the 37,396 deaths reported, it is not implausible to estimate that up to 186,000 or even more deaths could be attributable to the current conflict in Gaza. Using the 2022 population estimate of more than 2.3 million people, the projected total death toll would translate to 7 to 9% of the total population in the Gaza Strip, reads the study. Anthropologist Jason Hickel said the study pointed to apocalyptic figures in Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry's death count has been questioned since Israel began its bombardment of the enclave, with U.S. President Joe Biden saying in October that he had no confidence in officials' reports, and the UN revising its civilian death toll in May as the health ministry amended its reporting of unidentified bodies. We covered that. They did not lower their death toll. They just moved identified deaths, some of the identified deaths, into the reported deaths column because they could not identify who had been killed. The Washington Post has used the Gaza Ministry of Health figures. They have vouched for the Gaza Ministry of Health. Also, Lancet has vouched for those figures in the past, very recently. Despite that change, wrote the authors, the number of reported deaths is likely an underestimate, both because of indirect causes of death and the probability that thousands are still buried under the rubble left behind Israeli airstrikes. So if they're still buried under the rubble, those would not even be considered indirect deaths. Those would be considered direct deaths. Now, just a little background on the Lancet in terms of the credibility of the publication. This is nothing many of you in the chat don't know, but it is considered a highly, highly credible medical journal. Ranked 4th worldwide.
Hamas!
Yeah, exactly. Ranked 4th worldwide in environmental and occupational health, 2nd in infectious disease, and first in the world, above the New England Journal, on the general and internal medicine field. So this is a definitive source here. And they're saying that the number is close to 200,000 already, if not more.
Makes sense.
Which makes sense. It makes sense.
How can it not be? Look what they're doing.
Yes.
Look what they're doing to these people. They have no food. They don't have reliable, clean water. They have diseases, newborns. I don't even think we got to that story that newborns are very unlikely to survive at this point. Of course, it only makes sense. I always thought that number seemed low. that
Yes.
only that many people were killed under conditions like this, where clearly Israel is waging a campaign of genocide and ethnic cleansing to do what they have always wanted and just eliminate the Palestinian people from the region. They want to be like other Western colonial powers where they wipe out the native population, and in 30 years they can put up a plaque somewhere and talk about how bad they feel about it once they have the land.
Yes. Yes. And good on the Lancet for publishing that letter. It's a short piece. You can read the whole thing as a primary source, which we usually do, but it was kind of difficult to format. But that was a pretty good write-up. You can read the whole piece. It's just page and change. It's a letter. But to have a letter like that released by such an esteemed organization, at least gives people a sense of the scale of the damage, because we always knew, 30,000, that's just incredibly low at this point. I mean, it was that in January. So the last 7 months didn't happen. I mean, it's obviously been way higher than that. But to have an estimate come in, I mean, it's grim. It's horrible, but it's good work by them to actually put that out and to put their name on that, because, what are you going to do? I mean, they say the Gaza Ministry of Health, they don't trust that. Ooh, we can't trust that. Even though the Washington Post said they do trust that. Lancet said they do trust that. But, this is, like I said, first in general medicine, second in infectious disease, and then fourth in environmental health, which all of those things play a huge factor in that death toll. I mean, there's not a single facet of life that is in any way close to normal now there. So, when you talk about health outcomes, you're talking about all of that. It's a very broad term in this case.
Right.
Please clap.